Boom. What up, fam? Anthony Dream Johnson here today, co-founder of the Redman Group, founder of 21 Convention, 22 Convention, 21 University, and CEO of 21 Studios. Here with episode 133 of the Redman Group, focusing on family law for men, and parental alienation. And today's guest, one of two, we'll have another one joining in a little bit here, about 20 minutes from now, is Eric Carroll. He's the founder of Dad Talk Today, a huge podcast, number one in the world, I believe, discussing these issues on family law, father's rights, and parental alienation. They have a huge page on Facebook, about 300,000, 250,000, somewhere in that range, followers. Massive show they got going there. And you can find them at dadtalktoday.com. Check out the site, they have Patreon, all that going on. Anyway, without further ado, please help me welcome today's main guest and first guest, Eric Carroll, to the show. How's it going, bud?
What's up, brother?
Yeah, man. Glad to have you on the show. I appreciate it. I know we had some technical issues. Started the show a little late here, but really appreciate having you on, man. I've heard some of my friends have spoken very, very, very highly of you and the show you run.
Hey, I appreciate it, man. It's just, we're all in this together. We know that men's rights issues. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, no problem. It's just like delay or something.
I got you. Yeah, man. When it comes to men rights issues and fathers' rights issues, guys are really having their asses handed to them inside a family court. So, I was going through the same thing with my daughter. And once I started going to family law attorneys, I realized just how big the swamp was. And I said, I'm going to start a podcast and we're going to start fighting back. And that's basically where this whole thing started.
Yeah, so let's take a step back before we get into any more specific issues and content. How did you get started and why did you get started with this huge podcast you run now? And what's your backstory to even, finding out about this part of life, being such a disaster in a swamp, as you call it, with family law?
Well, so my background is in concert promotion. I used to book concerts and work with different celebrities and stuff, and that was a good while back. I ended up going through a divorce in 2016. I became a single father raising my two daughters. I made the mistake that a lot of men do. I rushed into a relationship without knowing who I was really getting involved with. She got pregnant, and, later on down, there's lots of details. I try not to talk too much about the personal story, but it was a nightmare. It was the classic narcissist parental alienation deal. So I got out. Once she found out I had moved on and I was dating someone else, she started keeping my daughter from me. And so I started going to attorneys. My first family law attorney I went to, I saved $400, which at that time, being a single father, paying all the bills was a good bit of money for me. He basically told me it was cheaper to keep her and I needed to find some way to get her back. And I was like, well, you're fucking crazy. I'm not doing that. I'm sorry. Can you cuss on this show?
Absolutely. Cuss all you want. Yeah.
I was like, well, you're fucking crazy. That's not about to happen. So I go to the next attorney, and he's like, man, you got one of the best cases I ever heard. This is a walk in the park. The only thing is I need $10,000 on retainer to get started. I was like, $10,000? Yeah, just let me pull that out my back pocket. And then I started realizing how big this swamp really was, because everywhere I went, man, it was just the same old thing. Here I am, a father. I've got two daughters. I've done everything, the model father that you could possibly have. And now that because I was in a relationship with a woman, I can't get access to my kids. So I started dipping into like Google forums and different stuff. I had no idea what parental alienation was. I wasn't even really well versed on narcissism, but you start going and reading the research and you're like, check. Oh, that's me. And I just started getting into these parental alienation groups and finding out, this is my situation here. So when Dad Talk started, Dad Talk was going to talk about many different things, man. Sports, movies, music, whatever. I did one of my first episodes on parental alienation. Then my next show was one of the guests that Rogan had on, but he was just talking about like a carnivore diet. It was a really popular show for him. And everybody shit on it. They was like, hey, we thought you was about parental alienation and family law. We want that back. And so it kind of opened my eyes. It's like nobody's really dedicating a podcast towards family law and parental alienation issues for these dads. If it's needed, that's where I'm going to go. So we started doing it, man, and it took off. It went way quicker than I could have ever expected. started interviewing a lot of the psychologists and different researchers behind the scenes, and it was it was humbling to say the least, just to see how quick it took off, and sad to know how many fathers are going through these issues. I thought that this was maybe a rare thing that was going on. I had never really heard of the silver bullet, and then I had all these fathers that started coming in with the false allegations and the different stuff, and man, dude, it's crazy. And it feels like sometimes we've gotten really popular with the politicians and stuff, but it feels like sometimes we're asking the abusers to stop the abuse, and it's a money marketing scheme is what it is. And they're trying to sell us our kids. It's all about, it's the same thing in relationships. However, the biggest diamond ring you can get your wife, that's how much you love her, or your kids. How much you're willing to pay for them is how much you love them. We are paychecks to the government. We're paychecks to many people. And being a dad means much more than that to me. So
Yeah, it's sick how fathers are treated today. It's interesting too. You mentioned it. It's how oblivious the average man is and the average father is to this going on until it happens to them. So if you go out in wider culture, if you just go to your local grocery store or whatever, like the average person has absolutely no idea this is going on. They're just completely oblivious to it. And yet it's like a hidden plague that affects millions of men all the time. Yeah, it's brutal, man.
Oh, they are. It's one of those things that if it's not happening to me, I'm not really cognizant of it. But I think it's starting to wake up. I mean, everybody's known about the bias that goes on against fathers in family court for decades, but it's really gotten to the point that, people want to see something, happening. These fathers are starting to commit suicide left and right, and there's so many different issues. The fatherless issue is one of the biggest epidemics that we're facing in the United States of America. We see all the statistics with the runaway use, the high school dropouts, drug use, so many things that go right in to fatherless. And the fact that nobody is addressing that really pisses me off, to be honest with you. I don't know how else to put it.
Talk to me about parental alienation specifically. What's going on here? There we go. What is parental alienation? What's the definition of this?
So that's one of the crazy things. If you ask the different, top researchers, psychologists, everybody's got a different view on what alienation is. Hardcore alienation would be when a child is completely brainwashed against the other parent to not want a relationship with the parent at all. They have just been conditioned to think that parent is the enemy, and I mean they check out. I think another side of that alienation is them just the ex-spouse or the ex-girlfriend, ex-boyfriend. They completely just keep the child away from them because they got the upper hand, they got the control any way that they can do it. It's very, very common, especially with the way our family law courts are set up, because they almost promote it.
Yeah, how does parental alienation affect fathers? I mean, we're talking about the children here, and we've talked about this in the show previously with various guests. The fatherlessness epidemic that's plaguing the country and burning it down as of last year. But how does it affect fathers? You mentioned suicide, things like that.
Oh man, I get messages all day long of people that are just on the brink. They just can't fight anymore. When you've gave every dollar that you've got into family court trying to fight for your children, and it feels like you just keep coming up on the short end of the stick, at some point in time, they're like, I have nothing else to give. And then they feel hopeless. And, it's kind of like, my situation. My daughter was 1 year old when I very first started getting alienated. And somebody might say, well, you can't alienate a baby. You certainly can, because if the baby never gets to see the father, then that story that they give them as they get older is that much believable, because they've never heard daddy's side of the story or even seen him there. So I think that's like ultimate alienation. But it's sick, man. It's sick stuff. I mean, we've got the stereotype of the angry dad that beats his wife, and all these other images that they've got out there of us. And what I'm seeing is these fathers that are breaking down behind the scenes, coming to me crying and doing everything they can to be inside their children's life, and they're not being gave a chance.
Yeah. Talk to me a little bit more about your own personal life, like before you got into all this. Did you grow up in an intact family, the two-parent privilege, as we call it?
I did. I was a pastor's son. My dad was a preacher. Both my granddads were preachers. I came from a family of ministry. It was kind of an old school mentality. I had a really good upbringing, man, and lived out in the country. Um, so, I quit school when I was 16, and my thing back in the past, I wanted to be a rock star. Everything about my life was music. I ended up getting into the music scene and became a promoter and got to work with a lot of my idols, growing up. But I fell into the trap, that I think many of us do. We're told for happiness, you got to get married, you got to have the house, you got to have the nice car. So as soon as I turned 18, I got married because I wanted to get out of my parents' house. I wanted to start my life, start my happiness, get my own house. And I was divorced by the time I was 21, raising my
Damn.
1-year-old daughter by myself. That was my first divorce. I've been divorced twice. And, I kept trying to actively pursue that. And every time, trying to rush into that, thinking that's where my happiness was going to be, I ended up on the losing end and hated looking at myself in the mirror even more because I didn't take time to love this guy at first. I think that's where a lot of these relationship problems come from, learning to be happy with yourself before you can be happy with anybody else,
Yeah. Yeah, starting with the most important relationship with yourself. Talk to me
Yep.
a little more about Dad Talk today. Like, what challenges have you guys been facing? I know we're big on YouTube here at 21 Studios, and we've had shadow banning issues, censorship issues. Every day I have to worry about getting, deplatformed, just the whole channel killed off for any random reason. What's it been like for you guys on Facebook, your biggest
Oh,
platform?
geez, man. We've had so many challenges that have came at us. We had a group of people that had got together and were lobbying, trying to get Dad taken out of Dad Talk.
Can you hear me?
They said, "Yeah, can you hear me, Anthony? We good?"
Yeah. Just had a delay. While you're talking, I'm gonna plug in a Ethernet cable, see if that helps things out. Hang on a second. You
All
can
right,
keep going
cool.
on it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, man. So at the beginning of Dad Talk, we had a group of
Hello?
people that tried. Yeah, I can hear you. But we had a group of people that got together and they was trying to take the dad out of Dad Talk today. Uh, then, earlier this year, we started talking to a lot of the politicians, and we're really popular in the conservative realm. Once we got back from talking to that, we just saw our ratings tank. And it's not that people weren't interested in what we've got to say. We were growing like 20,000 followers every 3 weeks. It's just Facebook really has the power in those algorithms to really keep this message, I feel, hidden. Um, it's it's scary because I believe the issues of boys and men is already one of those taboo issues that they don't want to push. And now that it's growing, if they don't want you to be heard, you won't be heard. I would think with, a page of around 250,000 people, our stuff would be getting pushed. Man, I've seen stuff where they'll show it to 10 people, and it's usually some of our most important stuff. Um, and that's really upsetting, especially when you're putting your all into it. And you're trying to grow a platform. You're trying to bring out a message, and then you put all your efforts into growing something. And now that it's there, they're not even letting your stuff go out to the people that followed you to get your stuff. We've seen, over the past couple of months what social media is doing to people. If they don't agree with your views, I don't believe that's free speech whatsoever. That's, it's censorship is what it is. And these big tech companies, in my mind, have way too much power.
Yep. Can you hear me, Eric?
I can hear you, brother.
Okay. You can't see me there, right? Just give me a minute while I figure out what the hell is going on here with this.
That's all good.
It's been a POC. We'll see what
If
happens
you
with my
want,
video, but at least my audio works.
I got you.
Talk to me about equal shared parenting. I know this is something that has been tried to get going in Florida, but so far has been unsuccessful. Talk to me about that and your issue or your thoughts on that.
What we're seeing with equal shared parenting, I've been involved with a lot of the legislative efforts. There's a lot of money that comes in to make sure that that doesn't happen. Once lawyers hear that there's a law about to be passed where dad will have equal custody to mom upon divorce without having to fight, they freak out. And, it's the legislation always seems to find a way to kind of sweep it under the rug. Now, in the state of Kentucky, they actually were very successful. They were successful in getting 50-50 shared parenting passed, which a lot of times our opposition in shared parenting is the domestic violence people. But now we have statistics to show in Kentucky, the first year that shared parenting was put into effect, domestic violence went down, I want to say something like 30%. Now, is that because domestic violence went down or because the false allegations went down? There was no longer a use for the silver bullet because that wasn't something that was being gave to him. So the fight for shared parenting is a hard one because we're going up against people that's got billions and billions of dollars. And unfortunately, most of our supporters are people that don't have funds. So trying to fight money without having money, it's rough, man. And like social media has been the way that we've gained our momentum and making sure that we're going to these political conferences and just getting in their face and saying, hey, what's going on? So, but it's starting to become much more of a conversation at these places, and people are starting to see our faces all the time, so they're getting a little bit more familiar with us. And believe it or not, especially in the conservative movement, they agree, but they're told that there's certain issues when it comes to abortion, economy, all these other things that they're supposed to talk about. We've got to come together as men and unite to show them that we do have a voter base, we do matter, and our voices, they have a lot of power. They really do.
All right. I think I fixed my technical issues. Appreciate you going off on that question while I rearrange the whole
It's all right, man.
digital life here. I want to welcome to the show Pastor Michael Foster, returning guest to the show and alumni speaker of the 21 Convention. Michael, thanks for joining on today.
Hey guys, how you doing? Nice to meet you, Eric.
Nice to meet you, Michael.
Good.
Sounds like you're fighting a good fight down there. That's great.
Yep.
We're trying, man. It's one of those tough fights. You just got to keep getting back up and swinging.
Mm-hmm.
Michael, I think your audio is not going to your microphone. It's
to my computer, huh?
Oh, wait. No, it's better now.
All right, there we go. I think I just didn't have this close enough. My apologies.
Yeah, nice. We're talking about parental alienation, family law, father's rights, things like that. From your perspective, Michael, talk to me about the role of a father in a child's life and how that disconnect, how that can affect both the father and the child.
So there's a great article by a guy named Robbie Lowe, Robbielowe. I think it's on Touchstone magazine. So he points out that there's this great study. It was a fascinating study. If a father goes to church, the odds of their kids going to church as they grow is like 80%, something really high, like 80, 90%. Even if the mom doesn't go. So if dad goes but mom doesn't go, the kids are likely to go to church as they age. Now, if mom goes every week and dad never goes, it drops down to like 40, 30%. If a dad's overweight, his children are more likely to be overweight, right? So the dad, he sets the thermostat in such a powerful way in the family. The dad is kind of the future of his children, and children look to him for leadership. And I remember there was this moment in my life where I realized how powerful my attitude was. My younger brother has struggled on and off with drugs, alcohol, in and out of jail, being homeless. And I'm never disrespectful to my brother, in front of my children. But I can remember Hudson, my eldest son, when he was like 4 years old, dissing on my brother, not respecting my brother at all. And it's because Hudson could read in me. he knew that I didn't respect my brother. I didn't. He's a druggie. He's an addict. I love him. But in terms of like respecting him, so fathers set the destiny of their child in a massive way, even greater than the mothers do. That's not to say the mothers don't matter. But when you take fathers out of the home, when you take fathers away from their children, chaos happens. That's what's happening right now. Like, we live in a fatherless society, and they're trying to replace fathers with the government, right? With the nanny state, the welfare state, and whatever. And we have a situation set up where women can divorce a man, take all the stuff and that he has a lot of times, but also that the state will come in and take care of her. So she doesn't have to depend on a man. She can depend on Uncle Sam, right? And that's not a dad. Like this, so this is a huge issue, and that's why what's great for a dad is that if you take responsibility for yourself, if you see something in your kids you don't like, say like, okay, is that in me? And then if you change it in yourself, you'll notice that your kids kind of follow, right? But if there's not a dad there, what are you going to do? Like, this is why I keep pointing out to people, telling men to man up is not helpful if they don't know how to be a man. And how will they know how to be a man without a dad? That's where they learn that stuff. You know, women are awesome at being moms. They're absolutely horrific at being dads.
I agree.
Well put. Yeah, it's almost like men and women are different or something, you know?
Isn't that crazy, right?
It is nuts, man. Yeah. Michael, talk to me about, in the church, you mentioned, you know, I've heard this too. This is a previous thing that the manosphere harped on, and I think they're correct, but you would have much more insight into it as a pastor. Maybe, Eric, you can speak to this well. You're the son of a pastor. I'm not either one of these things. Basically, men being told to man up. I hear this at the church, especially in the less hardcore versions. They say this a lot. And for example, a lot of times I hear about men being paired up with like single moms and stuff like that. So talk to me more about how that goes on in the church, you know, this man up mantra that seems to be very like hollow and very kind of like mindless, and there's not a lot of good to it, is my take. Either one of you have thoughts on that? Michael, we'll start with you.
Sure. Well, when they say man up, they almost always mean beta up. That's what they actually mean, right? They mean be a servant leader to your wife. And so I am the servant leader in my home, but the service I provide is leadership. Women don't always want to make the decisions. They're not very good at it. And what I offer my wife is she doesn't have to suffer from decision fatigue. I care about what she wants in our life. I listen to her. She benefits me. I need a wife. Like, my kids need a mother, and I benefit from her femininity. But at the end of the day, I actually I'm the one that makes the decision, right? I'm the captain of the ship. She's my XO. But the weight's on me. What servant leadership is in the modern church is, what does your wife want? Now give it to her. I make you into a pack mule, right? Where I exist just to please her. That's not the nature of our marriage. My marriage exists to build up a household, to train children, right? To accomplish the purpose of God. My home doesn't exist to make my wife happy. It doesn't even really exist just to make myself happy. Those are secondary things when we're focused on the work together. So a lot of times when they say bait it up, like, they have this obsession with guys doing dishes. Well, guys, when you get home, why don't you just do the dishes?
That really goes on in church today? They tell you to do the dishes?
It comes up all the time, man. I wrote a whole article on it, and I did research. I was like, what is with this? And I did research into feminist literature on doing the dishes. I was just curious. And I can post the article. I wrote an article on itsgoodtobeaman.com called Who Does the Dishes? And what I found is that the dishes represent being tied to the home, right? It's a menial, hard task. And Betty Friedan would talk about how she hated doing dishes. And after her husband divorced her and married another woman, he said, what is Betty talking about? She never did the dishes. And then she admitted that she didn't. And it was just a way to sow discontent, right? But these guys will say, well, your wife's worked all day long, hard. The least you can do is do the dishes. What exactly was I doing all day? Like, do I not work hard? Like, I work very hard. Now, I have no problem with doing the dishes or buying groceries. I'm a full-grown man. I did them when I lived by myself. And some mornings I wake up and the dishes aren't done. It's our household, so I just do them. I listen to a podcast and I do them. But I'm not doing it to get sex. I'm not doing it to be a servant leader. I'm doing it because it belongs to our cumulative property, our home together. And what I think these pastors are saying, that a woman has made a sacrifice to stay at home that you didn't have to make. So they still have this idea that out there in the career world, that's the real world, and the home is a sacrifice. No, it's not. It's not a sacrifice. It's what she's made to be, a keeper of the home. It's a blessing. Does she have a rough day? Does she need someone to help her out sometimes? Absolutely. I need that too. But I'm not making a sacrifice by going to work. It's what I'm meant to do. And she's not making a sacrifice from working at home. And so they have this low-level sort of feministic assumptions that are behind the advice they give. Bait up, do the dishes, man. You know,
it's almost like they've completely devalued the home in every sense, but especially as like a place where a woman would want to be. That just seems to be like delusional to them, right?
Absolutely. They're feminists, and they don't realize it. Feminists hate the home. Feminists define a woman's value by how much money she makes and her ability to compete with men. And they don't do a very good job competing with men. Oh, you can name, what, a handful of CEOs that are women? But a lot of times they take after a successful male CEO, establish the company. It happens over and over and over again. And by and large, the people that are successful at that level are men, you know. And so the church really buys into the feminist presuppositions, and that's what's behind Man Up. And when you have some skinny jean pastor with a faux hawk, you know, telling you that, like, it doesn't sell well, man. You know, like, I don't want to be like you. If manning up means being like you, I guess I'd rather just stay the way I am.
If I could, man, Michael, how do you think that narrative made its way inside of the church in the first place?
Well, there's different levels to it. Our biggest problem, and this is a longer conversation, is that the Industrial Revolution changed our entire notion of the household. So the household used to be a place of production. So men and women were made to work together. And men, women, and children, it creates deep intimacy, right? And I always use this example. Me and my wife, like, we used to love to stay up late when we were running an online business that we used eBay and Amazon as a fulfillment channel. We'd like drink wine, listen to music, pack up the Amazon stuff, and then like head back to the bedroom, man. It was great. And there's a reason why over 80% of affairs start in the workplace, because men and women were made to work together, and that's how you develop this really close relationship. Well, that workplace integration moved from 15% in the 1890s to about 45% during World War II. Then after World War II, it dropped down to the 30s, and then bam, bam, kept going up. More and more women left the home, more and more work left the home. And now, instead of like challenging that as normative, which is what the church should do, they just kind of given into it. And the best you get out of a church is kind of a 1950s view of the house. That's not my view of the house. My wife is extremely talented. She's got a nursing degree, and we've run a business together. But our home is a place of work. So they took kids, they took work out of the home. Then they took education out of the home. And then they took hospitality out of the home. So if you look at older houses, they have these huge dining rooms. You look at newer houses, they have these small dining rooms. Nothing happens in the home. The home doesn't matter. That's what you're saying. Now, you got these great reset Marxist idiots that are telling us, hey, in the future, you won't have to own anything. You'll rent. Right? You see, the narrative is the home doesn't matter where your parents, where your home. Everything's moving towards this status dystopian nightmare.
Well, they also want to lock you in this home that no longer has anything. So you don't own it. There's nothing that goes on there, and you're going to be locked down there indefinitely under house arrest as a healthy, innocent, adult human being.
That's right. You're a serf.
Makes perfect sense. Yeah, it makes you a serf. Yeah.
Exactly. And so that's what we've been moving towards. And that's why you want to rebel right now, homeschool your kids. You want to rebel right now, move towards whatever level of self-sufficiency you can, right? Learn how to grow your own food, make your home productive, make it provide income to you. And then when your wife is at home and she's practicing hospitality, which I do a ton as a pastor. Like my wife is central to my ministry. Like people come over, there's this wonderful food. She's really good at talking to women. She's training my kids. I have 7 kids. So she's like educating a 14-year-old all the way down to the littles. Her life is not this full of menial tasks. Does she do dishes? She better. They're not going to get done. But she also educates my kids. She also counsels women. And so she's not this, she's not my maid, but we all do maid work.
But typically you keep her barefoot and pregnant, right?
I try. There's nothing better than sex that puts a baby in a woman.
Yeah, dude. I've been saying that for a long time on Twitter, man. I keep saying it. Everybody gets mad. Yep, screw them. Eric, let's circle back. That's the new thing lately, right? To you a little bit here. Talk to me about the concept of man up. I mean, Michael's been going on with it here from a church perspective, and you're welcome to do that too if you have experience there. I imagine as pastor's son, you might have something to say. But I'm also curious about the concept of man up, specifically to family law and family court, because men go through terrible things like we're talking about here, and our audience is already in a lot of ways familiar with that. But if you get a crazy woman trying to take your kid, just man up, bro. I mean, why don't you just take it on the chin and man up? It's just a kid, man.
It's actually a really huge thing, because one of the things I tried to do a dad talk was go for an outside audience, people that are not familiar with the issues, so we can educate them on it. And every time I get a father in there that's in there asking for help and he's telling about his situation, he'll get 10 other guys that try to come on top of him. Dude, you just need to man up. You need to pay your child support. If you got to work 2 jobs, you just need to do whatever you got to do, and just completely discounts everything that this father is going through. And it's really became sickening, because they should be able to go to their brothers for help, man. I mean, somebody that's been through similar situations and to be able to get good advice. But that man up stigma, man, that's going around, it really hurts me, because sometimes these guys are getting it worse from the guys than they are the women.
Wow.
And I have it a lot. Most of the time, if I see it and it's getting to that point, I want to talk to these people, I'll just ban it, because I'm like, this person's in here asking for help, and you're just sitting here trying to put your thumb down on them even more. To kind of caveat of what Michael was saying, I haven't been in the church for a while, but growing up with my dad, he was the head of the household. He was the same way at the church. My mom played her part. She did just as much ministry as my dad, but she knew where it was. He died back in 2013, and she'll still tell you to this day, my husband handled this, and this, and I let him. I was proud to be his wife, and she was happy in that role. I think something's happened to where it makes these women feel like they are less than if they accept this role. Men and women were created different for a reason, and we should celebrate those differences.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
To your point, Eric, of men getting it harder from other men than women, I always tell people, if I had to make a choice between being stuck in an elevator with a radical feminist or a preachy white knight, I would choose the radical feminist every single time. Like, there's nothing more obnoxious than guys posturing themselves as having it figured out. And the reality is, a lot of those guys are just ran by their wife, right? And they're telling you, hey, when they say man up, it means like, be like me, learn to take it from her, right? Surrender to your wife. And that's not victory. That's not me being a leader. So yeah, I 100% agree.
It's, I don't understand it. To be honest with you, I don't understand it, why they would do that. And, the feminism is really seeking to destroy the modern family. I think at one point in time, feminism was a great movement, and then we saw the second, and what I believe the next wave is going to be even worse. I believe we're headed into some dark days with this, unless men start to speak out. It's no longer about equality, it's about superiority. And these guys are having to fight tooth and nail. And the sad part about it is, I have these guys that come and ask for advice of what they should do in family court. And I know at times it's like, man, you might have everything you need, and they're still not going to side with you just because you're a man. I had the father that came to me yesterday in the Navy. He was being abused. He had a autistic son, 4 years old. His son was being abused. They went to a domestic violence shelter. They got turned away 5 times, and was told, because you are a man. It's
Wow.
not just our brothers and different people telling them to man up. It's everybody.
It's almost like the man up concept is just a cover for and what it really means is man down, and not in a man down like someone got hurt or whatever, something like that, but it's almost like man down to declassify you as a citizen and dehumanize you and make you a second-class citizen, which seems to be, whether it's the church or family court or anywhere else, how men are increasingly being treated. You're treated like shit in the country that your grandfathers and your forefathers literally built. Yep. From every perspective. Yeah, it's sick, man. It's disgusting.
Michael, what I'd like to ask you about the church, man, why do you think the church is not getting more involved in marriages and family law and speaking one-on-one? That's something that I've seen over the years. It's like they could have so much inspiration and so much direction for these guys, but it seems like it's just an issue that many of them don't care about. They only do it if somebody comes to them and requests it.
It's a good question. I mean, some of it is that they're complicit. I mean, that's part of it, is that they're part of the problem. And we've watched our churches demonstrate just how weak they are. When the government said, hey, don't meet anymore, and the pastor's like, okay, and everyone was okay with it. It was understandable for the first couple of weeks when we thought, well, a killer disease out of China is 100% believable. But then pretty quick, we're like, okay, this is not what they said it was. But they're still doing it, right? Like at our church, we don't require masks. We don't require social distancing. We have masks and hand sanitizer when they walk in, and we leave it to the discretion of the individual, right? If you're that scared, maybe you should just stay home. We'll come visit you. We'll come pray with you. But these guys, they're not fighters, and pastors are taught that conflict is failure, right? And so their job in the church, in their mind, is to avoid conflict, right? My job in the church, the way I look at it, is I'm a hot compress. You take a hot rag and it pulls the pus to the surface, right? The pus is there. Right. It's just got to be. So I don't cause conflict. People will say that. I reveal it and then I resolve it. And so what we have to be willing to do is not look the other way. And that's why churches get caught up in hiding all these sex scandals, right? At some level, they saw it. So when a girl is being molested by her brother or her father or even by her sister, almost always the mother has a sense that it's going on, and she looks the other way. No one talks about that, right? She looks the other way because she doesn't want to believe it's true. She doesn't want to see it. A lot of pastors are like that with problems. They don't want to see it. Because if I remember this girl came over to my house and she had sex with her boyfriend, who was was kind of on the leadership track in our church, and you can't do that if you're a Christian. You can't have sex outside of marriage, especially if you're on a leadership track. So we discipline them, which is basically just said, can't do that. We're going to take you off the leadership track for a time. But then I was discipling this girl, and I remember this girl in conversation says to me, to my wife, she's like, yeah, and I'm not really into sex, because of reasons, Well, at that point, what do you mean you're not into sex? Sex is great. Why would you not? Women are sexual. And as soon as she said that, my wife looked at me and our eyes met, and we knew then we had to ask, why are you not into sex? Right? And it turned out that she had been molested. Pastor, and now that means I gotta go to the cops. Now I gotta write this letter. Now I gotta counsel this chick. Now I gotta figure out. And she was totally jacked up because she had sex with all these different people. She was but they don't want. They're lazy, Eric. That's the answer. Right. They don't want to take a stand. They don't want to make people mad. And also, it's extremely complicated. Right. That's why we need guys like you out there that actually can help me understand what's happening. I'm with you. Yeah. Understand what's happening in this case. So in church politics, a lot of things have to do with policy and order, right? Yeah. And if people don't understand that, the same way in a courtroom, as a pastor, I can talk your ear off about culture and theology and stuff. My understanding of law is limited, but I'm eager to change it, to help change it down. Our church is full of lawyers. I want to cause the feminists in the law. I want to cause them headaches, man. I want to tear it down wherever I can, but I don't know how to in some ways, and that's something I want to get to eventually. So I'm excited. I'm here. Tell me what I can do.
I'm with you on that. And, I think that's the hard thing is none of us have that handbook to tell us what to do. So we're constantly trying new things to see what works. Feminists have so much power, man. If
Yeah.
I have to be so careful with every little thing I say on my show or on my pages because I know it'll get taken down or I get censored or shadow banned. I go over some of these feminist pages and some of the rhetoric that they spill, and it's like, where's the fact checkers? Where's the censorship here? They can say anything they want to, and it's kind of hard to fight when you don't have the same weapons to go back and forth with. I mean, we have truth, we have research, we have the data, the statistics, everything on our side. We don't have a big enough microphone to go back at it. And I think another part of the problem, you're talking about the man up thing that was going on a while ago. These men aren't working together to get something done. A lot of them, sometimes they compete and they put each other down. If we're going to get some headway into what's going on here, we're going to have every soldier standing beside each other ready to fight this war, man, because this is a war on our families. And even if you're not going through it right now, maybe you're a single guy, you don't have any kids, this could happen to your sons. This could happen to their kids. It should matter to everyone because it can happen to all of us.
I've said that a lot, and even in my speeches. I'm not a father myself. I'm an uncle. I have 2 nephews and a third on the way, and I love them to death. But I know that this can happen to anyone. This could happen to me in a couple of years. This has happened to my friends. This has happened to people I know. I hear stories through email and on the show and stuff all the time. Just on a basic level, though, as a young American man and a young Floridian, I'm 32. I don't like seeing this shit. I don't like knowing that men in my county, in my community, in my state are getting fucked over in divorce court. That's not good for them. That's not good for my community. That's not good for my state. Ultimately, that's not good for me. And I'm next in the firing line if and when I get into. And I've dodged bullets, man. I married a prostitute, on accident many years ago, and it's in some ways hysterical looking back on it, but it was also very dangerous. And the fact that I got out of that without getting rammed through child court, family court, divorce court, things like that, was a miracle. And I know that most men are not so fortunate. They go through much more horrendous circumstances. They lose everything. They lose their house. They lose their wealth. They lose their future, their fortune. They lose their life if they kill themselves, which happens pretty often for men. So it just sucks. I'm glad that we can. It's not a main focus of the Red Man Group or what I do, but it's an important part of it to refocus on this from time to time, just to raise awareness on it and keep pushing the needle on it. And then I love seeing guys like, both of you guys doing different focuses on this. Michael is a pastor, this runs an awesome church. I'm hearing Michael talk about these things as a pastor, and I'm like, man, I grew up, I was raised Catholic, all these things. I went to church every week a lot of times growing up, and all the way through the 90s and even some of the 2000s. And I don't recall a single effing time, pardon my French, but single fucking time they ever addressed fatherhood in a positive light or anything to do with men or masculinity. The idea that a priest would speak up against men getting a church leader getting screwed over in family court systemically it never happened, and it would have never happened. None of them had. I don't understand the mechanics of how priesthood in the Catholic Church works to that degree, as it compares to pastors who are more independent, seems to be able to speak up. But yeah, there was no force behind it to ever do that, even if they wanted to, and I don't think they didn't even care at all.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's kind of crazy because at church they pray to God the Father, but let's not talk about the Father at home. I mean, that's really where everything stems, that the family is everything that we go through in society. And not just with family court, what's going on with our men. You look at the stigma, like and it's happening all the time, a boy gets raped by his high school teacher. People just don't look at that as a big thing. Now, if that happened to a little girl, that guy would be under the jail. I had a father not long ago. His stepmom, his foster mom had raped him when he was 16. She adopted him, and he turned her in. She pled guilty, $100, and she got probation. She was out. If that was the other way around, we've got to have equal punishments going on, and it needs to be looked at as the same. And the fact that it's not, it really worries me for our boys and men in the future.
Yeah. Let's shift gears to some other core topics or issues that men are facing. So we talked a little bit earlier about equal shared parenting. Talk to me about other issues that men are facing on that same kind of level. Michael can chime in as well, I guess, from his perspective as we go through it. But I mean, things like domestic violence, paternity fraud, child support laws, things like that. What are some of the core things that like young men watching this need to be aware of that's going on?
False allegations. False allegations are becoming huge. All she's got to do is say that you raped her or that you hit her, and they are going to believe her because they believe she's the victim. If you say it the other way around, I've always said that boys and men, they are guilty until proven innocent, while women are innocent until proven guilty. And you need to know that going into it. And for these guys going into family court or anything, like I said, you might think you have the evidence, but it's against you. There's definitely a bias. When it comes to domestic violence, you never see a man on a billboard. But Harvard went and did a study that showed that 70% of the time, the woman is the one that's initiating domestic violence. It got deleted 4 days later, which we can sit here and talk about why that might have happened. But it's interesting to find out that there's these statistics out there that shows that it's just as much, but when it comes to it happening to men, it's just not treated as serious.
Yeah. Do you ever talk on your show? Have you interviewed people about paternity fraud, things more specific like that? I mean, it seems to be a big father's rights issue too.
So I've had Carnell Smith, and if anybody has ever gone through paternity fraud, I beg you, please check into Carnell. Carnell paid 11 years in child support for a child that was not his. He ended up finding out. Now, when he took it to court and said, well, I shouldn't have to pay child support, the judge told him, nah, you should have found out sooner. And they kept him paying child support. Carnell then went on to pass paternity fraud legislation in 11 different states. And you talk about a warrior, but I actually... talking about that, I got his book right here, Chapped by Law, Stop Paying Child Support for Paternity Fraud. If anybody's going through that, this is the handbook that you would want.
And he was successful in 11 states in changing laws?
11 different states, man. And some of the stories that he was telling me about one father that was a victim of paternity fraud, and the mother knew it. And the father knew it too, but they knew this guy had money, so let's make him look like he's the father. Okay? Now, one day, they have a paternity test. The father finds out that he is the father, which he knew anyway, and the mom ends up going to jail. So the biological father then gets custody of his kid. Now this father he wasn't a father, he was a victim of paternity fraud, is paying child support to the biological father. That's how crazy this thing gets, man. It's not his kid. You done got duped that way, and now we're going to make you pay child support for a child that's not yours. And guess what? The biological daddy that already knew, he's got custody of the kid now.
That's disgusting.
Oh, yeah.
That's some of the most fucked up shit I've heard in weeks.
It's the swamp, brother. It's the swamp.
That's like gay cuckolding of some, like, I don't even understand. I can't even wrap my head around that. Fuck, man. Yeah, that's just brutal, man. Disgusting.
Yeah, I'll have to hook you up with Carnell, man. Great guy. And just hearing what some of these guys are going through, not just with the money, with child support, but could you imagine? I mean, some of these people don't find out until they're 20, 30, 40 years old that they was told somebody else was their daddy, and they never was. That's not only is that damaging the child, but it's damaging the father. It's damaging everybody. I believe we should have a law in place, man. If we had paternity test upon birth for every single child, how many children and fathers would that protect? But you bring that up, man, the PC alarms start going off, and no, you're not neither. Well, we need things in place, man. And if they really cared about these children, and if they cared about these fathers and wanted fathers in there and wanted to get away from this deadbeat dad narrative, they would put stuff like that in place. But I highly doubt they're going to.
Yeah. Let's think a little more forward here on this future thinking, so to speak. So we're in the very beginnings of a post-Trump presidency era. Politically, things have really shifted up. Like it, love it, hate it, doesn't, whatever. It is what it is right now.
Yep.
What is the future of the West with regard to these issues and now in our new political environment? I mean, it looks like, from my perspective, it's like everything is kind of on a downward spiral to hell. I mean, that doesn't mean it's going to... I don't think it's inevitable that continues indefinitely. I hope it does not. But in a lot of ways, it's like everything is kind of crumbling. Fatherhood is being, attacked. The household itself over the past, Michael here is talking about the Industrial Revolution, how the home itself has been devalued and in a way dehumanized, I guess, or defamilyized in a sense. In a lot of different ways, it's been screwed up. Men are getting just destroyed as fathers in family court, paternity fraud. Apparently, some men are paying other men for children that are not theirs. I mean, this is some of this stuff is so nuts. It is really stunning and a testament to how pathetic the court system is. I mean, it's not even a joke. A joke would be too kind of a way to call it at this point. But like, where is this all kind of going if we don't change the way fathers are treated, like that author did with 11 states? If we don't see massive pushes in that direction, like, where is this going to end up for men and for children?
I think Brave New World. It really is. Huxley nailed it. So Brave New World is the precursor to 1984. So in Brave New World is there's a girl that she's had sex with everybody, and sex is like, there's a proverb where, is it Proverbs or Ecclesiastes, where it talks about a wicked woman after she commits adultery, she just wipes her mouth, right? It's just like it's nothing. And I think they're trying to break down everything. Because when you break down family connections, households, communal connections, you're easier to manage. And that's the weird thing about a country like ours that is trying to give everyone this single identity. To do that, you have to break down the smaller competing organizations of the home and the community and whatever. I think we're heading to a dystopian future at rapid pace. And the things that are and that's not conspiracy stuff. I don't buy in almost any of that. I think JFK probably was killed by Oswald. That's who I am. This is for real. What's happening right now, and that's why I've pivoted since the election. I pivoted to focus heavily on local. I was moving that direction anyway, but right now, our ability to protect ourselves is going to be knowing your sheriff, knowing your prosecutors, knowing your defense attorneys, knowing your judges, becoming them. People in our church are getting positions in our local government right now. Like, we've been doing that on purpose, not because we want a theocracy necessarily, but we want our voices to be heard. And and there's some people on Twitter that are critiquing me, saying, "Well, that's not how we're going to take this country back." I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying that is the steps we can take right now to establish some sort of foothold and maybe come back. Because if we don't, here's one thing that's going to happen. I guarantee they're going to try to change being a parent to being a guardian, right? Mm-hmm. And when that happens, then you don't have any special rights over your children, and all children are dealt with as wards of the state. So that's Rousseau's idea. That's what we're removing. And Rousseau, what he failed to tell people is that he had a bunch of kids and gave them up over to the government because he didn't want to take care of them, right? And that was like his mindset. So I think one thing we're going to see is parents to be turned into guardians legally, and we better keep our eye on it because those things happen really slow. I mean, that's the things you learn about Marxists. Marxists plod, right? Really slow. They're very deliberate. They love bureaucracy. And then their moment comes and they just like a cobra. And that's why conservatives suck, because they only conserve the last liberal victory. They have no killer instinct. And during Trump presidency, there's a few times where we could have really just brought it to them, but they wouldn't do it. And so now what we have to do is plod, take ground, and when we get an opportunity to destroy our opponents, politically speaking, we absolutely need to destroy them, hold nothing back. And that's where we're at right now. If we have a chance to totally destroy these laws, we have to. I mean, that's what's going on. Those are my general thoughts.
Yeah, I love it. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I agree with that. We got to get some people that starts running for office. It's kind of hard because it seems like there's an elite few that they want in there and they know how to get them in there. And it's, the political landscape is just as bad as family law courts right now. I mean, I think we saw that with the election. if I said what I wanted to say, it would get us all booted off of here. So I'm going to try to go PG. But we're headed into an era where boys are not going to be able to be proud about being a man. We see it now. Sometimes you can't even tell which one they are now. And it's sad, because we should be proud of who we are and what we bring into this world. People talk about you should just accept people for who they are, when a lot of times they can't accept themselves. And that's the kind of society we live in. It's became pointing the finger back at us just because we're trying to stick with our morals and values, what they're being taught. You was mentioning something earlier, Michael, that about homeschooling. I used to be so completely against homeschooling because I believe kids learn so much at home. So much at school, with being teased and having bullied and all these other things. It teaches them how to overcome things later on in life. And now I'm seeing the indoctrination that they're starting to get inside of these schools. And I'm becoming much more of an advocate for that. Nobody can control what's being put into your kids' brains better than you can, right? There's so much trash that's being fed to them on TV shows and everywhere. We're heading into a society where, it's anything about being a man is just going to be completely wrong. I watched as Michelle Obama was with Oprah, and she said, men, you need to be better. You need to be better fathers. You need to be better husbands. You need to be better at everything. And they was all laughing. And then they put the microphone out there and they said, men, what are you going to be? They all screamed, better. And then they're just going right along with it. Why? Because they want the woman's attention. They want that affirmation. These guys need to grow up and get a set and start doing what they were called to do and being the leaders in their households and the leaders at work. And anyway, I'll leave it there, man.
What's interesting to me is there is some truth that men need to be better today, and in the manosphere is what we focus on. Right. We teach men how to be more masculine. We talk about these issues, raise awareness on things like family law and that are heavily biased against men and the risks that pose to you in your life as you navigate life as a man. Men today are fatter than they've ever been in America. They're more beta and all these different things. But as I see it, women are substantially worse off. Like, however much better men need to be, there's obviously zero discussion allowed, or as little as possible, that women today are basically fucked up. They're fat, they're slutty, they're less feminine than they've ever been. They're masculine weirdos, as is become normal. Women today sell pictures of their butt and their tits for $7 a month. And this has become normal for like hundreds of thousands of American women, maybe millions at this point. Like, that is a thing that they'll happily advertise on their Tinder profile at 20 years old. And then they'll go to school and they'll be a waitress at the restaurant you go to. Like that waitress that goes, when you go to Outback Steakhouse, that girl working, bringing you your food, very likely there's a good chance she has an OnlyFans that she runs on the side, or she's a nurse, or she's, there's like paramedics that do this stuff. We've seen in the news. Like it's like however bad men are today, and we have fallen. Masculinity has been under attack, and men have succumbed to they have enabled a lot of bullshit with feminism and whatnot. But it's like they're ahead of, I think, women are today where men will be at 10 years from now if this trend continues. They're like much further along this process. I don't know if either of you agree with that or have thoughts on that, but that's kind of my take on it.
I do, man. I think if a woman can shape up a man to be everything that she wants, and he does everything that she wants, most of the time that's the one she'll leave the quickest once she's got him the way she wants. But that man that bucks back, he believes in himself and he sticks close to his ideals, they go crazy for him. So you might think that doing everything that she wants is going to win you some brownie points, but in the end, you'll wish that you would have stuck to what you believed in the first place.
Yeah. I mean, Scripture teaches that the woman is the weaker vessel, right? And there's a sense where...
Are you telling me women are not strong?
Well, the interesting thing about it is that I think Scripture has a much bigger idea there. It's not just merely strength, but, for example, take war. Men are better soldiers than women are. One of the prime reasons is that we're able to kind of parse out, we can partition our experience in war. So when our friends blows up in front of us, men are able to keep moving in a way that a woman couldn't, right? Because a woman is primed to take care of children. She needs to be in the moment. She needs to feel everything. And it's very important for us as a nurturer to do that. That's wonderful in a safe zone. It is not good in a war zone or in a competitive place. So it shouldn't surprise us that as women have moved into corporate America in these areas, that we're watching alcohol rates, we're watching alcoholism, and the abuse of prescription drug just explode, right?
Yep.
And it's not at parity with men. Like, it's a problem with men, but women are outpacing them. And I think women are destroying themselves by not staying in the home. Like, they'll actually be happier. You know, a lot of the counsel I do with men, like a lot of times when they're not having sex in their home, one big reason is the woman's libido's dropped because she's so anxious. Right? She's just full of anxiety. And I'm like, well, like, doing the dishes is not going to solve that. We have to solve the anxiety. What's the source of anxiety? Well, women are a wreck right now. They just are. They're terrible. And people always ask me, how am I going to fix that? And I honestly don't fully have an answer. And that's why I focused on helping primarily young men and younger divorcees through It's Good to Be a Man, because it's not the same ball of Christmas lights that women are. Like, they've been lied to, they've been deceived, and it's been done through flattery. So in a sense, it's worse than men, because guys are like, we're like, you can only be spit on and kicked on so long. Either you stay a punk or you step up, right? And a lot of guys are stepping up, and that's why the manosphere exists. Guys are like, I'm sick of this. I'm sick of people telling me to be a wuss. I'm sick of people making me feel bad about having a sex drive or desire to be great or whatever. And they Google.
Tired of walking on eggshells at work, man, or at school or whatever.
Where women just are more complicit, more compliant, and especially like when you get these, you see these really extremely overweight women, and on Instagram or on Facebook, and guys like, oh, you're so beautiful, you're so wonderful. And you're like, look, you're a nice person, but you are unhealthy. Like, we should be able to like say that to anyone. Like, and the guys can say that to each other. Like, a guy's not going to get flattered at all, but a woman is. And so we flattered women into this place of destruction. And the thing is, like, even think about homeless. How many homeless women do you see? I guarantee there's more homeless men than homeless women.
Oh, yeah. It's like 85% male or something, or 90. It's hugely in favor of men, unfortunately.
And at the end of the day, it's because even a woman that's not very attractive, she still is, guys want to have sex, and guys are willing to put up with a lot and house something. And that gives us women tremendous advantage at this time. But it's destroying them in the process. They're becoming less feminine. They're losing their minds. It's like, well, you asked earlier, what should we warn guys about? Well, I warn them about loose women. I warn them about what Scripture calls whores. Well, that's what Scripture talks. I have to. It's very dangerous out there. And the
Scripture actually call them whores, like literally?
Well, yeah, but it's even more.
Wow.
Over and over, God calls them whores. But take this is from Proverbs chapter 7. This is Solomon. He's warning his son about a woman that's married. He says, with her many persuasions, she entices him. With her flattering lips, she seduces him. Suddenly he follows her as an ox goes to slaughter, or as one walks in ankle bracelets to the discipline of a fool, until an arrow pierces through his liver, as a bird hurries to the snare, so he does not know that this will cost him his life. Right? And it straight up says that when you get involved with a woman like that, it'll cost you your life. It says elsewhere, it says that she would devour your household, right? So all the stuff you've built as a man, because that's what we do. We build resources, and like I'm getting royalties on a book I wrote. I got the royalty check. I just give it to my wife, but she's not going to put it towards some stupid thing. It's going towards our goals. That's wonderful. But what happens when you give the royalty check to your wife and she just wastes it, or goes out with another man, right? Those women
spends it on makeup instead of GameStop. Gotta put in GameStop, man.
Nokia, man. I'm watching AMC. It's doing pretty well right now. Dogecoin.
Yeah. Man, there's a comment I wanted to pop out on this. Oh yeah, so you mentioned you made it very clear, Michael, that you don't have a total or perfect answer for what to do about women today. I don't think anybody does, and I don't either. Make women great again is my answer to the downfall of Western women today that are basically running off of a cliff, like full speed, full sprint. Make women great again is my answer, but really it's like a Hail Mary. I don't know what else to do. I mean, I've been successful with it since launching it and promoting it, but I don't know if in the end it's going to be. I think it's possible. Victory is possible with this, but it's not a guarantee. It's not a certainty. And the forces that we're facing with feminism, which I see as a multi-trillion-dollar establishment, Eric was talking about this, how powerful feminists have become. Beyond even, official feminism. Feminism has become the de facto, in my opinion, religion of modern women, most of them anyway. It really dictates, much more so than the church, any religious institution, whatever the religion is. It really dictates what they do and how they live and how they choose to live on a day-to-day, year-to-year basis. Every relationship, every time they go on Tinder, every time they go on Instagram, post a photo of their butt, every relationship they get into, every relationship they leave, every family they blow up, every father they screw over, every child they abuse. This is all like driven by feminism. I know that if, as a pastor, maybe you have even bigger visions of it, or stances on it. Good and evil. Things like that. And in some ways I'm with you on that. I think feminism is evil today. It's long past due that it needs to be abolished, and I don't see anything good about feminism in the West today. It's nothing but vicious hatred and lies and manipulation and BS that hurts women, it hurts men, it hurts children, it hurts families, it hurts the country, it hurts literally fucking everything. I don't know of a single useful thing feminism has done in the past 30 years. Nothing. So nothing but destruction and mayhem and chaos and vicious fucking nastiness. It sucks. We'll see what happens, I guess. But anyway, my main point was that I'm kind of with you on that. I don't really have a total answer either. My answer is make women great again, but it's a Hail Mary. And if it works, it works. Fuck yeah. And if it doesn't, it was my best shot. I gave it my best, and I can go home at least saying that. Go to my grave saying I gave it everything I had.
We're having daughters. We're closing on a house outside of the main cities. We're not sending our kids to public school. We're watching, if you watch like My Little Pony once was on, our daughters were watching it. And I was listening to what the basic idea was. It was terrible. It was all feminism, right? And you can't let those things get into your kids' heads. It's a battle because I don't want my kids to be weirdos. I don't want to keep them, like you're saying, Eric. Like, part of being a man is when someone makes fun of you, you need to know when to roll with it and when to strike back hard, right? Because it's really hard. Because if you overreact, everyone's going to make fun of you because they know you're soft. If you don't do anything, then people are going to like walk all over you. And you have to be put in a situation where everyone's not a perfect gentleman, because that's just how we are as guys. We make fun of each other, whatever, And so I don't want my kids to be protected from every challenge, but I also don't want them to be indoctrinated and corrupted. And this is why, like, people talk about seceding, like that's going to solve everything. But if you're still watching Netflix and still watching Disney and still doing all that stuff, I mean, they're teaching your kids to have feministic thinking, and to win a culture war, you have to have a culture. And Americans all are, it's like a degree. It's like the difference between Republican and Democrats, the difference between Pepsi and Coke, right? One's sweeter, but they both rot your teeth all the same. And that's where we're at right now. So we have to find a way to build a culture and to protect our girls from a life of pain. And my daughters are very emotional. They're like little tornadoes of emotion, right? And my daughter Galilee, I have to teach her to control her emotions. And I tell her when she acts crazy, and she does act crazy, I said, sweetheart, that's ugly. That's ugly when you act that way. It's beautiful. So I'm like trying to teach them what inner beauty is. And when all my kids will know that if you see a girl jogging down the street with her clothes painted on, they all know that her daddy didn't love her. That's what we teach. Our kids. I know I'm gonna hear bad about that, but I was like, I brought it up with all my kids at one point or another, and I'm like, see that woman doesn't believe she's beautiful. Why does she have to run naked like that? When you can see the outlines of a woman's vagina through her clothes, and you can now, and I'm not even looking. I don't care. I'm happy.
And then she will claim you're objectifying her.
Yeah, I'm like, you're objectifying you. You're the one that's naked.
That's right.
You know, and like, look, I'm sorry your dad didn't love you. I am. I'm sorry for you. But I love my kids. And you can take that. You take that somewhere else. Oh, we don't want you around here. And we have to like get that way now. So it's a fight, man. It's a fight for our life.
Yeah, speaking of that, woman running on the street with her clothes painted on, I like that. Irish Alpha 82 posted a stat here. I haven't verified it or fact checked it, but I'm assuming it's pretty accurate. 1 million OnlyFans creators today and growing. 86 million simp users and growing. The simps, that's one thing, but OnlyFans, I mean, I think it's a mostly American and Western thing. I don't think there's a lot of women in like Saudi Arabia with OnlyFans accounts. So that's a lot of women, and that's just OnlyFans. Looking at that. Never mind sugar baby websites like Seeking Arrangement has probably over 10 million accounts. Over the years that they've had. I kind of looked that up, but yeah, it's really stunning the degree to which women will objectify themselves, like Eric was talking about, and how insanely popular it is. I got trashed on Twitter last night for this from one of my Muslim followers. I was posting about a woman falling off a cliff today, and how insanely common it is for an ordinary, regular woman running down the street, like you're talking about, dressed with very little. That chick probably has an OnlyFans account or made an account and tested it for like a week, right? And then they gave up on it because they got just, demoralized or something. Or they kept going with it for 6 months or a year or whatever. And it's like, it's so... I think it's hard too. Like even Steve Burley was talking to the speaker on Twitter with me about this. He was not rude or anything like the other guy was a little bit. But, he was saying today, is it really any different, women today being these massive sluts and stuff? And I'm like, yeah, I think it is different. Women have always had a destructive kind of nature to them, the Jezebel spirit. That's been present since the dawn of our species, or however you want to look at it. But the tools that women have today to enable this stuff, whether it's fathers getting screwed over systemically in family court, or selling pictures of their butthole for $7 a month, like that is really not normal in the span of human history. This is brand new, and that it's not like prostitution's the oldest form of the oldest profession, right? Or they say, yeah, but that was always a very small chunk of the population. This is like really prostitution has become normalized for millions and millions and millions of women that are not 30 years ago would not have been streetwalkers, which was, that or like, escorting would have been your only options. Now it's like you have a buffet of options to be a prostitute. You have OnlyFans, you have Cash App, you can go on Tinder, and girls just post their Cash App now on the dating sites, and they have guys send them money. They do this on Instagram. You see it all the time. It's fucking insane.
Well, I know we have that natural desire to want to see that as men, but I mean, to some extent, we're responsible because we're playing into it. And if you're going after women like that and you get in a relationship and she runs off and gets attention from other men and you get cheated on, careful what you wish for, man. If that's what you're looking at, TikTok's one of the worst for me. It seems like every other video is a girl twerking her back end in the camera. And it's like you guys are feeding into that and going after girls like this, and you keep coming up with bad results. Try something different. It's like Pastor Mike was saying, you want to fight a culture, you got to start a different culture, right?
Well, you have to have one, right?
I think there's upside. There's a reason to be optimistic at some level, is that so there's 3 likelihoods in the next 4 years, okay? In order of likelihood, okay? So recession, very likely. We're always seeing with oil prices, like serious depression and straight up civil war. Those are like 3 things that could happen. Now, when those things happen and there's that huge economic instability, women, and our friend George Bruno pointed this out. He warned guys. He said, hey guys, now that all this stuff's going on politically, watch out. Old girls will reach out to you and don't get pulled into that, right? So what I think is about to happen is as our society gets less and less stable, I think women are going to want the protection of a man. They're going to want a guy that can provide and take care of them. At the end of the day, even the feminist sends her husband downstairs to see the bump in the night. And there's a lot of bumps in the night right now. And I suspect we'll be seeing a return to those to those relationships where there's a desire for a woman to count on a man. She'll want the masculine. I don't know at what level that's going to happen, but I do think over the next 4 years, it will get better. Women that were less damaged will trend back towards traditional relationships under Biden, because it's going to suck.
Well, even at the beginning of COVID, we saw that. My concern, and this is something that I was getting yelled at on Twitter for challenging, is for every woman that is less damaged and less trauma and all that and trends back that way as times get tough, there's a lot of women who will be damaged who will, like George was talking about, probably will fake that. They're just super opportunistic, which I think is a feminine trait to begin with, but then women who are damaged amplify it to sometimes malicious levels, narcissists, BPD chicks, things like this, or they're just so chaotic and destructive anyway.
Yep.
But I'm also concerned about even less damaged women, so to speak, doing it, and it's just not genuine. They're just doing it because times are tough, and as soon as they're not tough, they'll swing back in the other direction. As some of them will. I mean, what percentage is hard to say until it happens, but that's why it's like so the guy is yelling at me. It's like, man, in the manosphere even, it's like it's not. I really have women every year offer to be my wife, to have my children. Like, this happens consistently every year with good-looking women, and not all of them are whores. Like, I swear, some of them are like decent young women, and I'm still like, no, like you're not good enough. Like, I know this is. They're just so. I just don't trust. My trust in Western women has fallen to like absolutely bottom of the barrel levels. The only place in the world I've ever seen a concentration of like decent women and then good women and then less, like a healthy population of women, is Poland, Eastern Europe, or Central Europe as they call it. In America, like it's so difficult to find women like that. And I think too, even a lot of women who, even in America, who behave like that now. I think in the past it was different. Like, Michael, you're a young Gen Xer. Mm-hmm. I think you were probably the last round of men. Like, Elliot Hulse is your age, and he has a great wife too. You guys were the last ones to really have a meaningfully sized population of healthy women to choose from. This has fallen off a cliff in America, and the chicks who act that way today, a lot of them are really not genuine. They're just too fat to act like whores and get what they want from alpha men, so they behave in different ways.
Or it's LARPing with women. So
LARPing, yeah.
Yeah, and you notice this, and you're right. Elliot and I have a very similar story marriage-wise. Very high school, and I always bring that up. I get it right out because I know guys are going to say I have survivor bias and all that stuff. And
survivorship bias, yeah.
Yeah. I admit that is a little bit unique, but I have in the church what I look for in a woman that I'm going to recommend to a young man is I actually don't look for long hair and wearing dresses. That matters to me. But what I've actually seen is a lot of feminist chicks get into this sort of tradcon sort of life. They grow their hair out, they start wearing dresses, they bake sourdough or whatever. But when you talk to them, they still don't have a deferential attitude towards men. Yep. They're still really brash. Or they'll argue with me. I'm like, why do you argue with me? First off, I have way more degrees than you are. You're not even close, right? You're not even in my range of ability here. Why are you doing that? I don't understand. And I don't argue with women because you can't ever win. You just look like a bully, right? But then I remember this one chick, she told me she was beautiful. She had red hair, and she told me there's only two types of pants because she was criticizing women that wear pants. She said, there's sexy pants and man pants. And I told her, well, there's sexy man pants. But she would always wear dresses. But she was so brash. And eventually that girl started wearing pants again and has rejected Christ. And I guarantee she's sleeping around. I've seen photos of her or whatever. And so what I'm most concerned about when it comes to women is like their attitude towards men. Are they differential? What are their behavior? All the tradcon stuff that we see on Twitter, the MGTOW guys that mock it, they're not without justification because a lot of it is just LARPing. It's just showing.
Thank you for saying this because I get run up the fucking walls for challenging this tradcon stuff, and I really appreciate it. Just speaking your mind on this, man.
And I'm traditionalist, but like let's call let's call it like we see it, right? I mean, we need that right now, because what we want is not just form but substance. And these chicks, they have the form of traditionalism. You even see it in their little, like how many conservative girls have to show their cleavage in their profile pic? You see all these girls, you're like, look, the only reason anyone cares about your political thoughts is your breasts. That's it, and your pretty face. Because we can get your political thoughts from Jack, Murphy, from a ton of other guys. And honestly, you're basically taking their stuff and just rewording it. And the only reason, it's just like these girls on Twitch. They're not good gamers. It makes guys feel like they have a relationship with them. And this isn't what we want our daughters to be. I don't follow any of those girls. They're not real.
Yeah, I forget the Twitch stuff even goes on sometimes. I don't understand why people watch video games anyway, to be honest. I like playing them sometimes. I don't understand why people watch them. But then the chicks, the Twitch thoughts, yeah, it's so fucked up.
It's messed up.
There was something, Eric, if you want to comment on this, but there's something I wanted to, damn it. Lost train of thought on that. I'll circle back to you on that, Michael.
It's okay. I tell you, Michael, it's crazy because my grandmother, they were old school Pentecostal. My grandfather was a pastor too. My grandmother had never cut her hair. And you never seen her wear a pair of pants. She never wore a pair of pants in her life. She didn't wear makeup, and she was completely against it. And people used to think that was so weird, as did I. Now looking back at it, it's starting to make a little bit more sense to me now. I'm not saying every woman needs to do that, but now I see why she did that.
I worked for a publishing I used to be a marketer for a publisher. And we had a woman that was in, and this is the difference between your grandma and this woman. So your grandma did that out of conviction. She believed it at a principal level. But I knew a girl that I worked with. She was a sales manager, and she wore the denim skirt, and she had the braids and all that stuff. And she slept with everybody at that company. With everybody. Right. And you're thinking okay, you wear the braids and you have the denim, but you're sleeping around with everyone. And that's what we're looking for is character, is virtue. And I always tell guys, look, at the end of your breasts can turn into like a grocery bag with sand in it at the end of your life. Right. And so we shouldn't just marry.
Is that when you tie them in a knot and stuff, or?
They can wear swing low, sweet chariots. But you do have to marry for the long-term view. And I'm not trying to say beauty doesn't matter. It absolutely does. But guys have to start thinking a little more rationally about this, and not just marrying women just because of their breasts or because of their hips or whatever. You have to add some other parts to that, because who are you going to be stuck with at the end of your life? And these girls, they spend their beauty. They spend it. It's like drained out of them. I always tell my wife, her she's my grape, and I'm going to get all the juice out of her. When she's old raisin, that's my doing. I'm going to get all of it. But these guys have to have a vision for their. So ask yourself, do you want this woman to have control of your children? Because you've seen this, Eric, I know you have. One of the worst things that happens is when that guy loses access to his children, especially when he's not getting 50-50 time, that woman will use the children against the man.
Oh, it's a weapon. It definitely is, and
it's intense.
You got to go for character. And I think that's hard nowadays because people see social media, and these people can make themselves out to be anything that they want to be. And then once you finally get with them, you find out they're not exactly what they was putting out there. But going back what you was talking about a while ago, Anthony, it's kind of crazy, man. I got married about a year and a half ago, remarried, and I said I would never do it again, but I did. And my wife is Korean. And at first, I kind of, I dated her a few times, but I'm like, I'm not getting into nothing serious. And I kept her at an arm's length distance, and I kept trying to push her. But I started realizing they still believe, even though she was born here in America, she was raised by her mom, and they believe in those traditional roles. She was my wife. She was my rock. At the time she met me, I just had knee surgery. I was in a wheelchair, couldn't walk, couldn't do anything. And she waited on me hand and foot, man. She didn't worry about what I bought her or anything, and it was just completely different than any other relationship I had been in. And I realized it was from the upbringing. So there's definitely something here. But any of the American women that I dated, especially after being divorced, man, it was a nightmare. And after a while of dating these girls, you just start thinking there's nobody good out there. You know, you can tell when they're trying to act friendly with your kids and they really don't care. You know, there's some out there, but these American women are just completely jaded, man.
Yeah. So this brings up, this is perfect. My circle back to what Michael was saying earlier. I think you're both correct on this. The way Michael put it in particular really stood out to me, which is that you have to look at the attitude. Are they deferential to men or not? And that is number one. There's a lot of things you don't see with American women and plenty of nasty things that you do see. But one of the things you don't see is that positive deferential attitude to be respectful to men in general, as well as specific men in their lives, father, husband, whatever the case is. They don't have that. They don't have it anywhere. Like they really don't. And that is, I think, really central to, in my eyes, I've thought about this, especially the past couple months, past years, but really the past few months. What do I want for a future woman in my life to have? What is preferred and what is absolutely necessary? And that attitude, they have to have it. It really reflects their character and reflects who they are and how they're going to treat you. The way they treat other men is a symptom or a proxy to how they're going to treat you. However they're treating you in the beginning, that could be whatever it's going to be, right? The honeymoon phase, all this crap they call it. But how they treat other men, maybe at a restaurant, out around, their own family members, whatever that is, even their own cousins, even extended family and stuff. It's like, how do they treat men? And I think feminism has been so effective at brainwashing and propagandizing women. They don't even think about this. They do it very willy-nilly, so to speak. They just do it like a sleight of hand. They just don't give a shit. They're disrespectful by default to men. And that's what you don't see in Poland. That's probably the number one thing I saw. I've called it femininity, and you see feminine women, and there's no fat women, for example. That's a good thing. I don't think being fat is very feminine for women. But they're deferential to men. That's the attitude. You feel it everywhere. For me, it was unreal to see that in real life with, modern technology in a first world nation, like great place. I was in Warsaw, the capital city, a big city, and women are just like feminine and positive and respectful to men by default. Taxi drivers, the coffee shop guy, whatever. And it's something that I have to have in my life for sure at some point. I won't have anything else. But I love the way you put it, is the basic attitude, the differential or not. That is the cornerstone. The long hair, everything else can be faked much more easy. Because it's not as, the attitude is much more automatic. The hair, when you grow your hair long, it's going to be stuck that way until you cut it, right? So it could be years they have this long hair and the dress and all this BS. But that could always be faked. The attitude is much harder to fake when they're talking to a waiter at a restaurant or something like that, or to their cousin they haven't seen in a while, or someone at work, or who knows.
Absolutely. I read a whole post on it. Scripture warns about this over and over and over again. And back to Proverbs 7, it says, talking about the woman that's unfaithful to her husband, sort of whore, prostitute. She is loud and stubborn. Her feet do not stay at home. Proverbs 7:11. So there's this idea of being loud. And so loud's not just she talks loud, but it's her attitude, right? She's a brazen, brash woman. And you think of you watch these women have these breakdowns, and people will post them on Twitter. And they're just these crazy-eyed, like screaming. They're like a storm, up and down. There's nothing about them that is stable. And I mean, listen to this. Listen, people don't write stuff like this anymore. But this is Keel and Dillich. They write a really good Old Testament Hebrew commentary that I use. And talking about the prostitute, they write, "She is of a hidden mind, of a concealed nature. For she feigns fidelity to her husband and flatters her paramours as her only beloved, while in truth she loves none. Each of them is to her only a means and end to the indulgence of her worldly sensual desires." Right? She's just using guys. They knew that back then. She's just using them. It's all a big show. In the Proverbs 7 woman, I always point this out. When her husband's away for work and this guy's passing by her house and he's like, "Hey, come in here, let's have sex," is more what she says. But she says, I've already paid my vows, right? So she's a religious woman. And I have to warn guys about this. Like, just because a woman talks, Jesus talks, spiritual talk, doesn't mean that she's godly. Like, look at these attitudes. And if you want to see how right on this is. Take Kyle Trouble. You had him on a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
And take Lori Alexander. Kyle and Lori are very different worlds, right?
Yep.
Kyle's kind of like, he kind of was doing the pickup artist thing. I don't know where he's at these days, but writing manuals on how to meet girls in this country, that country. And then Lori is the mother of a bunch of kids, a fundamentalist Christian, and they both write these posts that go within a couple months of each other. They go viral. And Kyle, as I recall, he just wrote, when you're dating a girl, to find out about her sexual past, her attitude towards her father, right? And Lori did how men prefer debt-free virgins without tattoos. Mm-hmm. And they lost their mind. So what does Lori and Kyle have in common? They're applying standards to women that deal with their character. And the women hate that. And that's why guys what they have to do is they have to neg women in their head. So Neil Strauss, like back the game, you want to go to like early stuff. Strauss would always ask like girls, like, there's lots of pretty girls around here, pretty like you. What's something, besides your beauty that makes you stand out? Right. So it's like a neg. So it's taken away. But you have to do that in your head with these chicks. Like, what, besides your beauty, what makes this woman stand out, right? What makes her unique? And that's how guys have to approach it, because there's landmines everywhere. Do you want to be like the turd flinging monkey guy and just spend your whole life with a sex robot? Like, if that's not where you're at, you're going to have to start filtering and thinking through this stuff.
I mean, the fact that the situation is so bad that you see a rise in popularity for sex dolls and sex robots, it's easy to poke fun at, especially when they marry them, which is really crazy. But the fact that this is even going on at any scale should be alarming to anyone with common sense and a brain. Like, the culture is collapsing to the point that it's like Blade Runner shit, having like some AI fucking robot. Like, well, it's either that or you can go get your whole life ruined by a woman in divorce court and false allegations and Me Too and false domestic violence accusations. And you're going to get treated like absolute shit before law enforcement, before a judge, before the courts. Your bank account's going to get fucking, emptied out to zero. And then you're going to eat a bullet. And then no one's going to care. And it's like that, or you can go fuck a doll.
It's twisted times, man. Twisted times.
Yeah.
Eric, thoughts on that? What's your view on sex robots?
I don't know, man. I mean, Anthony really just made that sex doll sound more desirable than I've ever heard in my life, thinking about all the different things that, I don't think we've seen anything yet, guys. I really don't. I think this is about to really amp up and go even worse. What scares me, and maybe there's something I don't know of, is there any programs or anything out there for our young boys coming into this that warns them of what's going to go? Is there anywhere that they can get this education? And if there is it something that they got to search, or is it something they're actually just getting anyway? I mean, because they should have access to this, because these are all these obstacles they're going to be, overcoming. I got 4 daughters. I didn't have a son, but I have taught every single one of them these little tricks. You're not going to do this, but I know a lot of these girls, they're not getting that, and the boys aren't either. Yeah,
the only thing that comes to mind is just the manosphere. And fortunately, a lot of young Gen Z guys, they follow, the manosphere, they follow 21 Studios, they follow all these content creators, from Michael to Coach Greg Adams, George Bruno, like, and beyond. So it's really good that they're YouTube heavy, a lot of young boys, and they find these channels for whatever reason. That's about it. I mean, anything formal, I think, would be thrown out the window in terms of public school, even private school. Like, so there's nothing like that. And for women, we're doing Make Women Great Again. So that's been my pet project past year. It blew up in the media, which is pretty cool. Because, women have nothing else either, unless they have a good father. If they don't have a strong father teaching them how to be a good woman and not be crazy, hyper-emotional, and hate men, well, that's where they're going to end up. They're going to end up... Well, this is a great comment from this guy, Charles Merchant.
Yeah.
He called women pheno. The modern-day female is a pheno, a female in name only. And that's assuming they even identify as female and they don't identify as a he, his, which obviously now is a thing, or any of the other 400 genders. But a pheno is a really good way to put... I was thinking about this concept actually the other night, although I didn't put it together into the acronym. But he's right. Modern American women and Canadian women and whatnot, they're phenos. They're not really women. They're just female in name. And they have the biology, they have 2X chromosomes. They're female, but They don't act like women. They don't talk like women. They don't even look like women half the time. They barely look human sometimes. They're, super fat, and they have green hair, and they eat nothing but like beans. I mean, it's it's so fucking weird, man.
It's sad to say, man, the last time I went to Target, over half of the young girls that was there looked like boys, and half of the young boys looked like girls. And I said, what in the world are we coming to, man? And I don't know, man.
Phenos and Minos. Males in name only and females in name only.
It goes both ways, yeah.
Yeah. Michael, do you have comments on the pheno concept being introduced to us here?
When I was a kid, we called them Somalis. So she-male. Yeah, she-male.
Oh, fuck.
We'd say Somalis. That was our inside language. Yeah, I think androgynies are enemy, and they're trying to blur the differences between the sexes and make them interchangeable. And that's the real battle. Funny enough is androgyny among pantheistic pagan cultures is very normal. And so pantheism is where everything basically has a spirit. So think of like ancient African or ancient maybe South Asian, even to some degree Native Americans. They tend to have a high value on the feminine sort of priestess sort of thing. So what we're actually watching happen in America is a return to that sort of paganism that involves the feminist priestess, because she's like closer to nature. That somehow is pure in their mindset, and it's always connected to her being very sexual. And so we're going back to that right now, and part of that also is androgyny, where they're mixing male and female. So it doesn't surprise me that, I forget what it was, something like 25 or 30% of millennial women identify as bisexual. I read this article.
Yeah, I saw that recently.
There's a really high amount. Now, guys aren't like that, but women tend to have a more fluid relationship with sex, like in terms of coitus, like actual sex, where they'll change their views or their feelings on it through their lifetime, where men pretty much are what they are. They're less flexible. And so we're watching women catch these things, where they become bisexual because it's in, or because it's part of their group. And so we know with women that they're very contextual in terms of how they determine what's attractive for themselves and for men. And that's why maybe they want to be with the college or the high school quarterback, but then they want to be with the professor when they go to college, because it's different contexts. So we're watching all this stuff, all that stuff that is out there in the manosphere and in the red pill world. If it can be applied in a constructive way to society by non-broken people, the problem is I always tell people red pill's blue pill. And I don't really mean that, but just, you've got to get past just wanting sex. And that's the problem with a lot of guys. Red pill is just a short-term sexual strategy, as opposed to actual deeper insight to the nature of women and children, women and men, and how we apply it to rebuilding society. That's what we need. So,
yeah. Well, boys, then we wrap up for today. Going for almost an hour and 40 here. I need to get going a little bit. I really appreciate both you hopping on, your time. Sorry about the technical difficulties we had earlier. Some of that I think was on my end. My internet was cutting out or something. But it came together really good. It's been a great show, and I think we've talked about a lot of important issues and helped a lot of guys hopefully see the light, or be able to point their friends too in the right direction. Yeah, culture's going down the drain, man. We need to do something. Maybe it falls apart and we rebuild it. We'll see what happens. I did want to actually mention too, Michael, and on a future show, I'd like to talk about it with you, your county over country concept. No time today, but next time I really want to get into that with you.
Fight, build.
Yeah. And then Eric, thanks for coming on the show today, big time. And where can people find you, both you guys? Where can people find you both out? DadTalkToday.com, right?
DadTalkToday.com. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We was on Parler. There's a new social media platform called Clout Hub. We're really in tune with them, but you can find us a little bit everywhere.
Okay, Michael, what about you?
I'm on Twitter at This Is Foster. I'm also on Gab. I quite like Gab. I think Gab's a great place you guys should check out. And the website is itsgoodtobeaman.com. And we talk about a lot of these things really bluntly. And there's also a podcast.
Awesome. And you started a new church recently too, right? East River Church?
Did, man. East River. If you're in the Cincinnati area, go to eastriverchurch.org
Nice.
and come find us.
All right. Both of you, thanks for your time. Eric, appreciate you being a new guest to the show. We'll talk again soon. And maybe see it at 21 Summit someday or later in the year in October.
Let us
Michael?
know, man.
Yeah, man. Michael, we'll talk soon. Everybody else, thanks for tuning in today. I appreciate it. It's been Anthony Dream Johnson with the Redman Group, episode 133. I'll see you next Saturday. Peace out.